China, 850 AD. An alchemist looking for the elixir of life mixed saltpeter, charcoal, and sulfur. The mixture exploded with a flash when exposed to an open flame. He had created gunpowder. It was no elixir of life, but it was a turning point for mankind. Since that day, guns and gunpowder have been at the heart of the human experience. They have changed the way battles were fought and borders were drawn. The development of modern weaponry has seen the rise and fall of vast industrial empires in the quest to create some of the world's most innovative, powerful, and lethal machines known to mankind. These are the guns that changed the game. Joseph Stalin, president of the Soviet Union, said that artillery is the god of war. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, cannons, mortars, and rockets have become the most important and feared weapons in powerful arsenals around the world. With the mass production of iron and steel came the creation of a staggering array of large caliber weapons that collectively have changed the face of modern warfare. The big guns, the howitzers and rocket launchers, the RPGs and mortars, these are truly the gods of war. Modern artillery was born in the Napoleonic Wars. These were the first battles to be decided by the victor's strength in artillery and not simply a strength of numbers and small arms. Under Napoleon, the French standardized the size and caliber of cannons and reduced their weight by half. They also modified and lightened the carriages. By the First Napoleonic War, the French had the strongest and lightest artillery on Earth. Napoleonic cannons continued to be the mainstay in major conflicts right up until the late 1800s. And by the beginning of the American Civil War in 1861, there was one cannon that stood out from the crowd. The Napoleon 1857 dominated the artillery of both the Union and Confederate armies. Manufactured in bronze, they weighed in at 2,445 pounds and had an effective range of almost a mile. The Union Army manufactured 1,156 and the Confederacy 501 of the cannons. This reflected the industrial North's greater manufacturing capacity. And when the copper mines in Chattanooga, Tennessee were captured by the Union, the Confederates were forced to use iron for their cannons. Visually, the Napoleons were also different, with the Union using a distinctive flared barrel, while most of the Confederate cannons were straight-barreled. The 1857 was a step forward in both range and accuracy. It used a number of different types of projectiles, including ball, which was primarily used against enemy fortifications, shell, which contained an explosive charge, and canister, in which a thin metal container containing 27 iron or lead balls was used against enemy personnel. Fire! During the Battle of Gettysburg, the most pivotal moment came in what has become known as Pickett's Charge. Led by Major General George Pickett, 15,000 rebel soldiers advanced towards the Union line in a desperate bid to divide and shatter their enemy, thereby allowing General Robert E. Lee to march on Washington and end the war. The assault began the largest military barrage of the Civil War. 150 Confederate guns bombarded the Union line for more than an hour, but most of the shells flew harmlessly over the enemy line. At first, the Union gunners returned fire, but then they stopped, making the enemy think that their artillery had been destroyed. When the Confederate infantry line got to within a few hundred yards, the Union cannoneers changed their ammunition to canisters, effectively turning their Napoleon 1857s into giant shotguns. At the end of the charge, over 7,000 Confederate soldiers were dead or injured. It was the beginning of the end for the rebel cause. Just as it took the French to perfect the smooth-bore front-loading cannon, it was also the French that designed and built the world's first truly modern artillery system. The Cannon D-75 Model 1897 featured breech loading using a unique eccentric screw mechanism that allowed very rapid reloading. It had a rifled barrel and used smokeless powder in self-contained ammunition with the powder charge and projectile encased in a brass shell. The designers of the French 75mm created a hydro-pneumatic recoil system to deal with the higher breech pressure and drastically increase muzzle velocity. The smoothness of the system had no equal during this era, and it meant that the gun did not require retargeting after every shot. With its unique breech loading and recoil systems, the gun was able to fire 30 shells per minute. So effective was the French 75 in World War I that the Germans called it the Black Butcher. 17,500 were produced during World War I, over and above the 4,100 already deployed by the French Army in August 1914. They distinguished themselves in the Battle of the Marne in 1914 and the Battle of Verdun in 1916. In Verdun alone, 1,000 French 75s were in constant action for a period of 9 months, using over 16 million shells. The British and U.S. armies also used the French 75 in World War I and World War II. And in 1918, the guns were manufactured in the U.S. by Willys Overland. In 1941, some French 75s were removed from their carriages and used as the primary gun of the M3 Lee and M4 Sherman tanks. Although they were superseded by a number of other guns, they were used in many major conflicts right up until the 1970s. The French 75 was one of the first big guns to use smokeless gunpowder. It was developed in Paris in 1884 by a chemist named Paul-Marie Vieille. He called it poudre blanche, or white powder, and it was safe unless compressed, very moisture resistant, and produced almost no smoke on discharge. Vieille had instigated the biggest change in weaponry and warfare since the Chinese invented gunpowder. 3 years later, another innovator appeared on the scene. He would become the most famous inventor in the history of armament and ammunition design. If Vieille invented smokeless gunpowder, it was Alfred Nobel who perfected it. Born in Sweden in 1833, Nobel was a competent chemist by the age of 16 and fluent in English, French, German, and Russian. He had a passion for explosives and had learned the fundamentals from his father, an industrialist who manufactured explosive mines and machine tools. In the 1840s, nitroglycerin was invented. It was an extremely powerful but terribly volatile compound. It led to deadly accidents. The challenge was to combine the power of nitroglycerin with the stability of gunpowder. But it was not until 1887 that Alfred Nobel finally harnessed its power in a compound he called ballastite. Ballastite and its successor, cordite, became the propellant behind some of the most powerful weapons in history, including Little Boy, the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. But it was far from plain sailing for the brilliant Swedish chemist. Although Nobel held the patents to ballastite, cordite, and dynamite, he was in constant litigation with competitors such as Hiram Maxim, Sir Frederick Abel, and Sir James Dewar. Even so, by the 1890s, Nobel held 355 patents. Just before Nobel died in 1896, he specified that his considerable fortune should be used for prizes in physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, literature and peace, to those who, during the preceding year, shall have conferred the greatest benefit to humankind. The Nobel Peace Prize. In World War I, the average crew for one French 75 was 10 men. The guns were heavy and couldn't be moved quickly, and because of this, they were predominantly operated from behind the front line. The British Army was looking for a light frontline weapon that could actually be used from the trenches by a small crew. In 1941, they found a real game changer. Mortars are short-barreled, muzzle-loading weapons that fire projectiles at low velocities using high, arching trajectories. They had been in use for hundreds of years prior to World War I, and their primary function had been as siege machines to break down fortifications. Consequently, they were dense, cumbersome, and designed to fire heavy projectiles. The battlefield of World War I offered new ways of using mortars, if they could be made light enough to be used from the trenches. Wilfred Stokes was a civil engineer who went to work at the Ministry of Munitions in 1914. Curiously, Stokes' mortar design was initially rejected in June 1915 on the grounds that it was unable to utilize existing British mortar ammunition. It required the intervention of David Lloyd George, then Minister of Munitions, to push through manufacture of the Stokes mortar. The Stokes light mortar was deceptively simple. It was comparatively light and only required a two-man crew. At a pinch, it could be operated by a soldier on his own, and its size made it the perfect weapon to be used from within the trenches. It consisted of a smooth metal tube fixed to a base plate that absorbed the recoil. It had a light but sturdy bipod mount. When a bomb was dropped into the tube, an impact-sensitive cartridge at the base of the bomb would make contact with a firing pin at the base of the tube, thereby ejecting the bomb. The cast iron mortar bomb was 3 inches in diameter and weighed around 10 pounds. It was fitted with a modified hand grenade fuse on the front and a perforated tube with propellant charge and impact-sensitive cap on the back. Stokes mortar could fire as many as 25 bombs per minute and had a maximum range of 1,200 yards. The Stokes mortar remained in use until World War II, when it was gradually replaced by the ML 3-inch mortar. But most modern mortars are direct descendants of Stokes' invention. Stokes was knighted in 1917, and the Ministry of Munitions also awarded him royalties of £1 per mortar bomb fired. While the Stokes light mortar was celebrated for its compact, lightweight design, in the late 1930s, the Germans began developing the largest gun ever used in combat. Krupp was a huge steel-making dynasty that emerged in Germany's Ruhr Valley before the Industrial Revolution. The Krupp family had been involved in gun manufacturing since the early 1600s, but during the Napoleonic Wars, they became an industrial powerhouse, creating a steel empire that would dominate the world for the next century. Krupp became the official arms manufacturer for the Kingdom of Prussia and later the German Empire.
From the inexhaustible resources of the Saar came the coal and ore which kept the huge Krupp works at Essen going at top speed day and night.
during Hitler's rise to power and preparation for war, Krupp supported the Nazi regime and the use of slave labor.
By Nazi decree, he is denied the right to strike or even ask his employer for a raise.
In the lead up to World War II, the German army became obsessed with monster weapons. They tasked Krupp to build a railway gun. It wasn't a new idea. Large cannons and howitzers had been transported on railway trucks and fired from their carriages since the American Civil War. And Krupp had previously designed and built Big Bertha, a 20-ton siege howitzer with an effective range of 9 miles. It was used in World War I to destroy fortifications on the Western Front. By the late 1930s, Krupp created several giant railway cannons, the K5 series. They were designed to be moved around on the existing rail network, and as they had no ability to swivel, a turntable was needed to effectively aim the weapon. Nonetheless, their size alone struck fear into the Allies. The K5 railway gun had an effective range of up to 40 miles. Each highly explosive 288mm shell weighed 562 pounds. A K5 battery consisted of 2 guns, each with its own train. A third train was required to transport the civilian crew of 84 people, including administrative personnel, mechanics, cooks, and security, as well as 42 trained artillery officers. In 1940, 3 K5 guns were positioned on captured French turntables facing the English coastline. These guns were able to bombard shipping in the English Channel and coastal communities. But it was doubtful whether they earned their keep considering the numbers needed to operate the gun and guard it against attack from the air. In 1944, 2 K5s were moved to Italy in an attempt to stem the American advance at the town of Anzio. These 2 guns rained shells down on 70,000 Allied troops as they tried to advance from the beachhead. By the end of this campaign, over 22,000 Allied soldiers had been killed or injured. The K5 was a very big gun, but it was not the biggest rifled weapon ever to be fired in a theater of war. That honor also went to a Krupp gun. The Schwerer Gustav weighed in at 1,350 tons and had a rifled barrel of over 100 feet long. It used 80-centimeter shells that were almost 12 feet long and had a range of over 30 miles. A crew of 500 was needed to fire the gun, but it also needed 3,000 to move and aim it, plus 2 flak battalions to ward off Allied air attacks. It eventually saw action at the Siege of Sevastopol, where it destroyed a fort and an undersea munitions battery. In the course of the battle, the Schwerer Gustav fired 60 shells before the barrel had to be replaced. The city of Sevastopol lay in ruins, and the gun was then moved north to where the Nazis were planning an attack on Leningrad. The attack didn't eventuate, and Hitler decided that the expense and difficulty of transportation made the Schwerer Gustav a liability. The big gun was dismantled and buried. Big railway guns needed strong anti-aircraft support because their size made them easily seen from the air. The next game changer, also made by Krupp, was an anti-aircraft gun and one of the most feared German weapons of all time. The word Flak is a contraction of a German word meaning aircraft defense cannon. American historian and World War II veteran Paul Fussell wrote that American troops knew that the greatest single weapon of war, with the exception of the atomic bomb, was the German 88mm flat trajectory gun, which brought down thousands of bombers and tens of thousands of soldiers. The Allies had nothing as good, and they knew it. Infantrymen were known to call the 88 the anti-everything gun. The German 88 was developed in secret because new weapons development was restricted by the Treaty of Versailles. Krupp decided to take the 88 to Sweden and develop it there. They sent engineers and ballistics experts so that the work on the weapon would be continuous. This effectively enabled them to develop the weapon with complete freedom. The 88 was renowned as the deadliest gun of World War II. It put fear into the hearts of airmen, tankers, and infantrymen because of its accuracy and lethality. Sometimes, a manufacturer is so prolific that they're worthy of the game-changer status. Krupp was just such a company. Established iron and steel manufacturers for over 300 years, they had the ear of the German ruling class. They were an innovative and resourceful organization, but for the first half of the 20th century, armament manufacture became their core business. After World War II, Alfred Krupp was one of several German industrialists charged at the Nuremberg trials. Krupp was found guilty, but he resolutely proclaimed his innocence. In 1947, he said, "We Krupps never cared much about political ideas. We only wanted a system that allowed us to work unhindered. Politics is not our business." In 1999, Krupp merged with Thyssen AG and became Thyssen Krupp AG. It wasn't just the Germans who went for the big guns. At the beginning of World War II, the U.S. field artillery units also deployed a monster gun. A howitzer is a gun that can fire shells at high trajectory over hills and forests, but it can also fire at low trajectories like a cannon. Its invention has been variously attributed to the Dutch in the 17th century and also to the Englishman Henry Shrapnel, who invented shrapnel shells in the 1800s. The M1 howitzer was nicknamed the Black Dragon. It was the most powerful weapon deployed by the United States on World War II battlegrounds. It fired a highly explosive shell that weighed 360 pounds and had a range of 14.3 miles. And its carriage was fitted with heavy axles and wheels so it could be towed in position. The M1 saw action in Europe in the Pacific campaigns in World War II. It was particularly potent against the heavy fortifications on the Siegfried Line and along the Western Front.
Meanwhile, the Americans had penetrated the sacred soil of the Reich, breaching the Siegfried Line and capturing Aachen, the Allies' first prize in Germany itself.
It was retained by the U.S. until stocks of ammunition ran out in the late 1950s. During the Korean War, 12 of the guns were recommissioned for use by the 213th and 159th Field Artilleries in order to attack a series of deep Chinese bunkers and fortifications. With the first shot from an M1 in Korea, a battery from the 213th struck an ammo dump near the target at the top of a hill. The chain reaction it set off blew away a large chunk of the hill in an awe-inspiring blast. Very big guns were too difficult to move and provide effective support for infantry. When the United States entered World War II in 1941, their standard battlefield artillery needed to be both mobile and powerful. 8 million horses were used in World War I, and one of their primary uses was for pulling artillery.
Ain't it sad when a fine old regiment like the HAC gets mechanized? 400 years of grooming horses just to put spit and polish on the backside of a tank. Think of the murder in the art of the smithy when he contemplates the horrible prospects of shoeing caterpillars of a tractor. Oh, the hell of it, Horace. Weren't horses good enough for Napoleon and the Duke of Wellington and all the big knobs of history? And Julius Caesar weren't exactly a damn fool at the war game, were he? Having taken away the horses from the artillery, the next thing they'll be taking away will be the guns.
After the war, the American military began developing new field artillery to replace their aging French 75s. By the time World War II started, their plans were well advanced. The 105mm M101 howitzer had a range of 7 miles and was very accurate. It was ideal for supporting infantry. In the gun's early development, the carriage was designed to be towed by horses, but the design was changed to allow the gun to be towed by a new generation of motor vehicles. It was a relatively heavy gun for its caliber because it was designed to be durable and reliable. The barrel and carriage could withstand punishing use without replacement. The M101 went into production at the Rock Island Arsenal in Illinois in 1941. And when the United States ended the war after Pearl Harbor in December that year, the M101 was ready for action. The gun gave a great account of itself in the field, particularly in North Africa, the Pacific, Italy, and Europe. By the end of the war, over 10,000 had been manufactured. The M101 was also mounted on an M3 tank chassis to create the howitzer motor carriage M7. After the war, a large number of M101s were exported to NATO countries and other allies. Even though it is no longer manufactured, the M101 howitzer has been a key player in every major conflict from 1941 until the present day. The M101's greatest attribute was its mobility compared to horse-drawn artillery. But the next game changer could be comfortably carried on the shoulder. Don't be deceived, though. It really packed a punch. On the surface, a bazooka looks similar to a mortar, but it's a very different weapon. Where a mortar uses a high trajectory, a bazooka doesn't. The mortar launches a bomb, whereas the bazooka launches a small rocket. The mortar is placed on the ground and has a fearsome recoil. The bazooka has no recoil because its projectile is self-powered. Leslie Skinner was the son of an Army surgeon. He studied at West Point and went on to the Army Corps, where he became an airship pilot. In 1932, he was attached to the Aberdeen Proving Ground and had the opportunity to experiment with rockets, but at the time it attracted little interest. In 1940, he designed a tube-launched anti-tank rocket, but the project stalled because there was no suitable warhead. Skinner began to work on the rocket itself, and a brash young Army Ordnance officer, Edward Uhl, continued to work on the launcher. As Uhl was walking past a pile of scrap metal, he saw a piece of metal tubing and had a brainwave. Put that tube on a soldier's shoulder, and away it goes. In 1942, their prototype launcher was tested on a moving tank and scored several direct hits, while 5 different mortars didn't even get close. The bazooka was born.
Now for the American bazooka, once a hush-hush weapon revealed at last to a mystified public by the newsreel camera. A sort of rocket gun that can be carried by one man. The bazooka, too, has a very remarkable effect on enemy tanks. One German tank crew in Tunisia surrendered because they thought they were up against a 6-inch gun.
The bazooka was developed primarily as an anti-tank weapon. but it proved itself versatile in a number of different applications. It launched a 3.5-pound 19-inch rocket that carried 8 ounces of pentalite, an explosive that could reliably penetrate an armor plate. Operated by a crew of 2, the bazooka could fire as many as 6 rockets per minute, and when it saw action in 1943, it was so effective against tanks and fortifications, it caused the Germans to increase the amount of armor on their tanks. The bazooka has been used on many modern battlefields, but it is also remembered for being the weapon of choice for what was arguably the first terrorist attack on U.S. soil. It happened in New York City on the 12th of December 1964. At the United Nations General Assembly, the Cuban foreign minister and firebrand Che Guevara had the floor. He was publicly denouncing United States foreign policy when a rocket fired from a bazooka whistled across the East River and landed harmlessly 200 meters short of the United Nations building. After his speech, Guevara chomped on his Cuban cigar and quipped that he thought the explosion gave the whole event a flavor. 3 anti-Castro activists were later charged, but were released the following year on a technicality. Che Guevara was captured and executed by the Bolivian army in 1967. Inspired by the success of the bazooka, the Russians also developed a shoulder-launched anti-armor rocket-propelled grenade launcher. The RPG-7 is simple, lethal, and incredibly reliable. The letters RPG stand for Rocket Propelled Grenade. The early versions of this weapon were developed from the German Panzerfaust used in World War II. After years of modifications, the RPG-7 was trialed successfully in 1961. The shape of the rockets for this weapon make its impact much stronger. The fuel and rocket are contained in the metal tube on top of which the warhead is located. With the conical front, the high-explosive warhead can penetrate 11 inches of steel, making it very effective for anti-tank work. The weapon has an optimum firing range of 400 yards, with a maximum of 100 yards. The RPG-7 has become the most widely used anti-tank weapon in the world. Like the AK-47, it was a simple, robust, and reliable weapon, manufactured in large numbers by the Soviets and their allies. More than 9 million have been produced, and it's still being manufactured in 9 countries. The weapon has been used in conflicts from Vietnam to the Syrian Civil War. It has also been popular with insurgent groups in the Middle East and Central and South America, as well as the Irish Republican Army, who used it from 1969 to 2005. The RPG-7's lethality was underlined in 1993, when 2 RPGs took down 2 Black Hawk helicopters as they hovered over the streets of Mogadishu in Somalia. As American soldiers were sent to the wreck sites, pitched battles broke out in the lawless streets of the troubled city. 18 U.S. soldiers were killed and 73 injured. Hundreds of Somalis also died, causing immense hostility and further fighting. The incident was immortalized in Ridley Scott's film, Black Hawk Down. While the bazooka and the RPG-7 fired rocket-powered ammunition, there were other grenade launchers that could be used to accurately fire explosive, gas, or smoke grenade cartridges. This game changer is an odd-looking gun that earned the nickname Thumper, or elephant gun, by U.S. soldiers who first used it in the Vietnam War. The M79 was born out of the desire to increase the firepower of the infantry. Your average soldier could throw a grenade about 30 yards, yet the grenade could send its fragments 35 or 40 yards. That meant that the soldier needed to take cover immediately after throwing. The M79 grenade launcher was capable of sending a grenade to an enemy position 350 yards away. The M79 first saw action in the very early days of the Vietnam War, where it became known as the platoon leader's artillery. The M79 was easy to operate and accurate, but its single-shot action became seen as its biggest drawback, especially when involved in sustained firefights. Although it has been largely replaced by the U.S. infantry, the M79 is still used by U.S. Navy SEALs and Army Special Forces because of its accuracy and range. The M79 has also been used extensively for crowd control purposes using tear gas or rubber bullets. Towards the end of the Vietnam War, the United States moved to a grenade launcher that allowed a grenadier to function as a rifleman and vice versa. The M203 is designed to fit under the barrel of the US M16 and M4 carbine assault rifles. It uses the same rounds as the M79, but whereas the M79 was the primary weapon of those who carried it, the 203 allows the user to switch effortlessly between grenade and semi-automatic rifle. The 203 weighs only 3 pounds and fits on rails fixed to the bottom of the rifle. It has become the primary grenade launcher for the U.S. military since the Vietnam War. It's a breech-loading and pump-action weapon. It's available in 2 sizes, 9 inches and 11 inches, and comes with a handguard and sight assembly. The M403 is one of the most famous weapons in the history of Hollywood. This is partly due to its appearance on the hip of Tony Montana, Al Pacino, in Brian De Palma's classic gangster film Scarface. The gun used in the film had to be manufactured by the props department because he couldn't find a manufacturer to sell him a real one. The drawback for both the M79 and M203 grenade launchers was the fact that they were single-shot. In the early 1980s, a multi-shot grenade launcher burst onto the market, and it was a game-changer. The Milcor MGL, Multiple Grenade Launcher, was developed and manufactured in South Africa. It was officially accepted into the South African Defense Force in 1983 and has since been gradually adopted into the military and law enforcement in over 50 countries. It's a multiple-shot weapon that can really boost a small squad's firepower. It uses a revolving barrel magazine similar to a Colt revolver. It can be loaded with a variety of rounds, including high explosive anti-tank, anti-riot, irritant, and pyrotechnic. Rounds can be fired as quickly as the trigger is pulled. With its effective range more than 100 yards greater than single-shot launchers like the M79 and M203, the Milcor MGL is a very powerful weapon, both in battle and law enforcement.
The Cold War rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union began in 1947 and continued until the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. It triggered an arms race unlike anything the world has seen. Under the tenuous doctrine of mutually assured destruction, both sides developed even more potent nuclear arsenals. Fortunately, the next game-changing gun was never fired in anger. All three branches of the United States military added nuclear weapons to their arsenals. The Army made the decision to develop an artillery piece capable of delivering an atomic warhead. Samuel Feltman was a brilliant scientist and technologist. He was involved in the development of the first electronic computer and the hypersonic wind tunnel. He was also fundamental in the development of the 90mm and 120mm anti-aircraft guns, the 240mm howitzer, and many other weapons. He also played a pivotal role in developing the M65 atomic cannon and the nuclear artillery shell, Atomic Annie. He was posthumously inducted into the United States Ordnance Hall of Fame in 1992. In May 1950, work began on gun T-131, a heavy but mobile long-range gun. In October 1952, 3 of these huge guns were demonstrated to the U.S. public at the Aberdeen Proving Ground. The weight of the gun and its carriage was 47 tons, and its length was 39 feet.
The American Army's atomic gun on maneuvers in Nevada proved itself highly mobile in spite of its 85 tons. A number of these formidable weapons is being sent to Europe for NATO defense. Here's the first picture of the gun firing an atomic shell.
A far cry from the German railway guns, it could be set up for firing in 12 minutes and returned to traveling mode in 15 minutes. The gun's range was said to be 20 miles with pinpoint accuracy. That's less than 20 yards from the designated target. The Kenworth Motor Company manufactured bespoke front and rear gun lifting trucks, and the entire assembly was called the M65. The total weight was 86.4 tons. 3 years after work on the gun had commenced, a 15-kiloton shell was test-fired at the Nevada Proving Ground during Operation Upshot Knothole. This was the first and only nuclear shell to be fired from a cannon. The gun's debut performance was witnessed by over 20,000 officials and soldiers. The test was a triumph, and another 20 M65 cannons were produced. Their total cost was over $16 million. They were deployed in Germany and Korea as part of the nuclear arms race, but were never used. For security, they were often moved around to avoid enemy detection and targeting. These M65s also worked as a military deterrent in Europe and Asia for over 10 years. In 1963, U.S. military developed a smaller 8-inch 203mm gun called the M110. It was easier to transport and maintain, and the M65s were subsequently withdrawn from service. The M65 was an engineering triumph, but it was still heavy and cumbersome. Its demise came not with the introduction of another big gun, but with the development of nuclear options for existing, more mobile field guns, like the next game changer. By the 1980s, the 155mm howitzer had started to change the dynamics of modern artillery. It became the field gun of choice for many armies, but its range and firepower came at a price. It required a crew of 8, and at almost 10 tons with its towing carriage, it was heavy. Early in the decade, the Vickers Shipbuilding and Engineering Company came up with the idea of making the 155mm howitzer lighter by using different fabrication methods and materials. They calculated that by using titanium alloy in many structural parts of the gun and hydraulics to operate the breech, load tray, and recoil, they could trim close to 4 tons from the weight of the gun, making it far easier to tow and light enough to be transported by helicopter. The United States military put the new 155mm lightweight howitzer through its paces, and in 1989, trials began. In 2002, the gun was reclassified as the M777. The first of the new guns were delivered to the United States Marine Corps in 2003, and a multi-year contract was awarded in 2005. The M777 is compatible with the full range of 155mm projectiles, including Raytheon missile systems and the BAE Excalibur. It can fire standard unassisted shells 15 miles, but using the Excalibur system, the range is 25 miles, with a circle accuracy of 10 yards. Although the United States stopped manufacturing the 155mm nuclear shell in 1994, a nuclear warhead could be delivered on the Excalibur system. This big gun is currently in use by the United States and many of its allies, including Canada, Australia, India, and Saudi Arabia. It has been seen in combat in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan, and thousands of rounds have been fired in action. For more than 1,000 years, guns and gunpowder have changed the world in a myriad of ways. Guns have been at the heart of almost every major event in modern history. There have been many iconic guns, but only a few have been true game changers. The Colt 45 revolver and Winchester 1894 repeating rifle are credited with taming the American West. The Thompson machine gun inspired 1920s law enforcers and gangsters alike to pay big dollars for a state-of-the-art machine gun. While its poor cousin, the Sten gun, delivered a similar performance for a fraction of the cost. The French 75 cannon heralded an entirely new artillery system. Mobile, lethal, accurate, and suitable for mass production. While the Gustav Schwerer, the largest cannon ever deployed in anger, required a crew of over 5,000 people to aim and fire it. There are currently close to 1 billion guns in the world, in many shapes and sizes. It has become impossible to imagine the world without them. For better and worse, guns have become a defining feature of our identity.